Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. Now, do you sacrifice yourself and your needs for other people? Well, if so, this teaching is going to be for you. You'll discover why you do this, how your inner child is involved, and what you need to do to start putting yourself first. Okay, David, so how common is this that we give of ourselves too much and sacrifice our needs?
It's really common in different degrees, Alex. It can go as bad as martyrdom. Is that you? Do you martyr yourself? Do you actually physically, mentally, emotionally, financially put yourself at the bottom of the pile? And there can be a wide spectrum of how people do this. In my experience, when I work with clients, the number one thing that I hear when we address this issue is, surely, David, putting yourself first is selfish. And so that's the number one thing that I hear.
Yeah.
That's the justification they give to me for not getting a correct balance here.
But surely if we're in a relationship or a family or we have children, that is a good thing to put other people first and to consider other people.
Well, this goes down to a spiritual teaching,
Okay.
Alex, that it's one of the most powerful spiritual teachings to understand the flow of chi energy.
Okay.
So we have to understand the flow of chi energy flows through us first and then out. So being selfish, for instance, would be flowing through us and us hanging on to it and not allowing it to flow out. But what we're trying to do is to flow through us first and then flow out to other people. What a lot of people do, it's almost as though they put up an umbrella and they deflect the energy onto other people, hoping that they will give them reassurance, validation, praise, love, all of the things that they're looking for that they can give to themselves. They're sending it to other people, sacrificing themselves, people-pleasing, hoping that they will give them back what they believe they're looking for and they need.
Okay, so what you've just described there is almost like the strategies by which we live by and relate by, that the people who sacrifice themselves too much are operating this strategy of deflecting energy and attention away from themselves, which what you're saying is which you naturally should almost take nourishment from first yourself, and they divert it onto other important people in their life. And that could be family member, but it also could be friends and your boss and all sorts of people who you rank higher than yourself.
Yes, the ranking system is important here. And also as a word I want to introduce, I know you don't particularly like this word, but it is a manipulation. If you're doing this, you are creating a manipulation. You're doing something, hoping to get something back. So that's the first thing. And then come on to your thing, a ranking system of authority. Who is more important? So that could be partners, families, friends. You quite rightly say the boss, hoping that if you keep yourself small and insignificant, they will then step into the void that you're creating and they will say, oh, no, you're really great. Oh, haven't you done a great job? Aren't you a wonderful sister, brother, daughter, wife, husband? Aren't you so great? So again, that's why I know it sounds like a very negative word. I don't think it is. I think it's a very powerful word. That's why we manipulate to try and get that nourishment. There's a wonderful saying here, a Taoist saying I want to share with you before we move on. The Taoist says it's wonderful to be of service, but make sure you have something on your tray to serve. And so this idea of the chi energy, the life force flowing through you first and then out to others, is a fundamental teaching of this life lesson. It has to nourish you first so you can nourish others. There's two examples I want to use. They're quite different. First of all, I want to remind you, when we step on a plane, what do they tell us? You put the oxygen mask on yourself first so you can help others. That's the same principle. Here's another more personal principle. Look at a breastfeeding mother. Notice how she really takes care of the food and the drink that she's consuming, so the milk she gives to her infant is of the best quality. That's the principle. You look after yourself, so the energy you're giving out is of the best principle, and it reflects you.
I've got a couple of things to ask you there, David. The first thing is really that I think a lot of people would really dislike the thought of the idea that they were being manipulative in this process. In fact, many of them think, well, I'm giving, I'm being very altruistic, I'm being very caring, I'm being very loving. This is not for a manipulation. So is it a kind of subconscious part of our mind that's doing this manipulation? Because certainly for many of us, we may not be consciously aware that this kind of give to get strategy is going on.
I guess that's why we do these life lessons, isn't it? Because it is a part of your mind. You may call it your subconscious mind or your ego. In our model, we call it your inner child. And so if you look at all children, again, it's a powerful word, but they manipulate in some way. Oh, mom, oh, dad, that's not fair. Oh, my friend does this. You're not doing that. They do this. Can I get this? I want this. And so they use their emotions to manipulate. As I said, the word manipulation has got negative overtones, but I quite like the word. Emotional manipulation is virtually what all children do, because that's the only tool they have, is their emotions, to try and manipulate a situation to get it the way they want it.
And I think that obviously it sounds like we're getting towards touching into how our inner child is involved in this now. But one thing I want to just address before we move on is the concept of appropriateness as part of this, because sometimes it is appropriate and the right thing to do or maybe it isn't. I'm kind of tying myself up in a knot now with this question, because I know what you're going to say to me. But to sacrifice ourselves a little way, so sacrifice a piece of our time that we may not have time to do, or sacrifice, I don't know, ourselves in some sort of small self-care way in certain circumstances. So if we have a child very much in need, or a family member who is quite sick, that there are times when small sacrifices are okay.
I think the word sacrifice is the wrong word there, Alex. I think using your two examples, I'm sure our supporters can think of other examples. Giving to somebody in your family who you love care and time is not a sacrifice, and you would have to authentically and truthfully rearrange your tray so you can rearrange your life. I don't think that's a sacrifice. And certainly for parents, for their children, I don't think it's a sacrifice if the parenting is done correctly. So it's very important to be honest with your child. I'll just give you one that's just come into my head. It's okay to say to your child, I can't do that now, I'll do it later, as long as you do it later. So I don't think that's sacrificing yourself. I think that's giving your child a good grounding to understand that when they want something, because this is part of the mindset of the inner child. They want what they want, when they want it, how they want it, right now. And for those of us who've had children, who've got children, you know this to be true. They can be a darling child. You can love them to bits. But sometimes, if you allow them they never stop. They are demanding, and if you give it to them, then they want more, and they want more, and they want more. And so they have to learn, as part of your parenting techniques, when no means no. But if you promise something, you do deliver it. So I think that's better time management or self-management. Perhaps that's the most important thing, managing your energy. But the concept is still the same. The energy, the flow, the love has to come through you first, so you can give it out to other people. It is not going to work if you drain yourself, if you're so tired, if you haven't got time for anybody, including yourself. It's almost as if you get dragged down into the quicksand or the vortex or the mire, and then you end up with, I can't cope. I'm not good enough. I'm not appreciated. It's not the way I wanted. And then that sets up in your mind what we call the carousel of despair, slowly getting worse and worse. And that puts so many walls, brick walls in you. And you know, often in these teachings we talk about don't put the brick wall to stop that flow of chi energy. So we've got to dismantle those brick walls, and we've got to build bridges that we can receive the chi energy, the love. We can self-love, self-nurture, self-nourish, and then the bridge to flow out to those who we want to share that wonderful gift that you have, that authenticity, what I would call your Shen spirit.
So in terms of building these bridges, David, for ourselves, what are you talking about? Being consciously aware of how we manage and apportion our physical energy, our physical time, and our mental and emotional energy and time, and making sure that we devote time to ourselves, that we nourish ourselves first through self-care, through eating well, through exercising well, through resting well, through kind of quietening our mind, not always being busy, and just having whatever way, because everyone's routines are different. And I think maybe it's about being acutely aware of what we need in any one moment, and also acutely aware of our tolerance levels in terms of physical energy. So I know, like, my physical energy levels are different to your physical energy levels, and the things that tire me more are different to the things that you tire you more. But having an awareness of that, and I guess part of this is getting comfortable with saying no, or as you say, kind of being able to say to people, I can't deal with that now, but I'll deal with it later. And having that form of communication in place.
I think that's the bridge. The first part of what you were saying, the bridge is to our spirituality, is for us to really appreciate what's important to us. You've just listed our nurturing, our nourishing, our awareness. That's the bridge to our Shen, to our spirit, to who we are. And what came into my mind as you was explaining that is the number one thing, as I said at the beginning of this teaching, that bridge is turned into a wall when people will say, well, that's selfish. That's selfish. And I understand that, because for the early part of my life, I was actually told you must put people in front of you. You come bottom of the list. And this teaching is absolutely turning that list upside down. And then when you went on to explain more, it's about being truthful to yourself and to others. Don't promise what you can't deliver, just to please. That's people pleasing, as you mentioned before. Trying to give them what they want that you haven't got yourself. And this is very important for those areas that you listed, your family, your friends, your partners, at work. Be clear. If you promise something, this comes down to your truth, honesty, and integrity. Deliver it. If you don't think you can deliver it, don't promise it. And that's the boundaries and the setting the boundaries and the saying no that you're talking about. And most people would say, oh, yes, but what will they think about me as if I say no? And then I'm going to give you another Wu Wei Wisdom teaching. What others think of you is none of your business. What you think about you is your business. Focus on what your business is. Because if I approach 10 of your closest friends and family and ask them what they think about you, I will get 10 conflicting answers. And so the only one that really knows you, that can get connected and walk over that bridge to your spirit, your spirituality, your value and worth is you. And you have to make that connection. Then it flows through you and out. And once you're connected to Source, again, lots of Taoist teachings today. When you say you're connected to Source, you're connected to the well that never runs out. You're connected to the abundance of the universe, the infinite. And when you're connected to that, you'll suddenly have this surge of energy, of authenticity, of truth and honesty that will flow through you in Wu Wei. Effortless effort. That's what it means.
But David, it sounds like this is a very heavenly picture you're painting here, but that part of our mind, our ego, or our inner child that is driving this manipulation so it gets love and validation and reassurance and worth and status and all those things, wants all of that, but it really, really dislikes the idea of not performing, not people disliking it, people thinking that you're being mean or selfish or nasty or not a good mother, not a good father, not a good husband, not a good wife, not a good friend, not a good colleague. It gives you all the negative self-talk and all the reasons why you should stay just doing these small sacrifices of your own needs and time and energy. It kind of tries to convince us to stay in this vortex, this cycle of manipulation.
It does.
So how do we overcome it?
You're right, Alex. Well, you overcome it by, that's why we do these life lessons. First, you have to have an awareness. And this is just the inner child wanting things the way it wants it. You're absolutely right. It's been doing it for a long time. The inner child favors familiarity, even if it doesn't work. This is very important. You do things just because it's familiar, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it creates emotional pain of anxiety, stress, tension, fear, all of those negative red light feelings. The inner child will favor familiarity because it knows the outcome, even if the outcome is negative. And this is very important. Because to get out of this, the answer to your question is you have to do the inner child's work. Because the early part of your question was all about what we call CCJ, criticizing. The inner child hates being criticized. It will quite readily criticize as everybody else, typical child, but it doesn't like being criticized. Comparing. Oh my goodness. This is part of this sacrifice. This, what we're talking about here, is comparing. Comparing yourself to others and wanting to do better than others. Not to show off, not to be a dictator, but just to be slightly superior. The inner child likes that idea very much. Because it believes, if I just finish this teaching, that if other people see it as perfect, slightly better, they would love it, wouldn't they? They would enjoy it. They wouldn't criticize. They wouldn't compare. And then finally, being judgmental. Again, the inner child will gladly judge everybody, including you. But it doesn't like being judged. And so this is the vortex that you talked about, the carousel of despair. And then, unfortunately, that carousel of despair becomes familiar.
But David, I think this change in behaviour, this prioritising, understanding and then prioritising ourselves first in terms of our energy. We're all sensible, intelligent people. We can do that if we choose to. But I'm thinking that it's always going to feel hugely uncomfortable to do that if that part of our mind, the inner child, fundamentally believes it's not good enough, it's not lovable, and the only way that it can solve that problem, solve that personal deficit, is by getting reassurance and strokes and validation and praise of other people. If you hold those beliefs about your own worth, it's almost near impossible to change these surface level patterns of behaviour in terms of how we treat ourselves by comparison to how we give of ourselves to other people.
You're right, it would be impossible because you're buying into the inner child's model that you have to look externally for worth and value. And so this is the reparenting. And what the question you just asked, if you buy into your inner child's model of life, its view of life, that you have to search for validation. I have this conversation with my clients all of the time. I don't even understand how somebody can give you value. What is value is not a commodity. How they got it in excess, and they can pass it to you, and then you'll have it. Think about that concept. It's nonsensical. But if you just listen to what Alex says, and if that kind of made sense to you, then I'll tell you quite frankly, you have fallen for your inner child story, hook, line, and sinker. You believe what the inner child is telling you. And this is why this life lesson is so important. You have innate, inherent value and worth. It's your birthright. You are a spiritual being. Somebody hasn't got more than you or have it in excess that you have to beg. Please give me some of my worth. I'm worthless. I'm not good enough. Please give it to me. And they go, oh, okay, like a beggar on the street. Here's some worth. Make it last you. This is a nonsense, a childlike way of the view of the world. This is not the way. If you think like that question that Alex has just said, you badly need to re-educate your child, because your child is stuck on the carousel of despair like a hamster's wheel, going faster and faster and faster and faster and getting nowhere. And then disappointed, disturbed, and then who does it blame? Blames you. It's your fault. You're not good enough. You can't cope. You're unlovable. If you were better, if you were like him, if you were like them. And this is the work you have to do for yourself. And this is the reason why we do these life lessons. This is your responsibility. No one else's. You have to do this work. You have to find out what you believe, why you believe it, and then re-educate your child in small, consistent steps every day. Every day when you hear this nonsense, you have to stop and you have to give your child the correct information from a place of love, compassion, and spiritual knowledge.
So what we're talking about here is the inner child reparenting work, which we've done so many teachings on, and I will put a link in the show notes to our inner child reparenting playlist to help you with this. So ultimately, the goal of the inner child reparenting work that is required in this instance is to do the inner work with ourselves to, I guess, emotionally educate through compassion and attention our inner child to explain to it and to get it to fully understand and accept that we have intrinsic value, that we are intrinsically lovable, that there is nothing missing in us. Because at the moment, our inner child is holding on to these lies, and that's why it's constantly looking for external validation and you're sacrificing your own needs as an adult because of this inner child narrative that's going on.
That's right. One of the ways that I teach it to my clients, and I've said it on these teachings many times, imagine a newborn baby, a baby that comes down from the womb through the birth canal, comes into the world. And if this has ever happened to you, or you've been in the delivery room when you've seen this happen, would you expect the midwife to hold up the baby and say, quick, can somebody give this child some value and worth? And that really is the basis of this. Has that child got innate value and worth? Or does it have to be given? And if it has to be given, the giver, where do they get it from? Why have they got it? Why have they got more than you? Do they go to a value tree and pick it? Come on. This is the fundamental. You have innate, inherent value and worth, whether you like it or not. And you can build that wall and block yourself off. But isn't it the time to deconstruct the wall and use the bricks to build a bridge and reconnect to your birthright, to who you really are? You are a spiritual being. You are awesome. Never doubt yourself. And allow that energy to come over the bridge through you and then out to those who are important to you in your community, in your work, in your family, in your friends, and to anybody that you come across, because you will be connected to a well that never runs dry.
And David, I know when we truly believe in our own worth and our own value, and we therefore then find it almost effortless to consider ourselves first, to make sure we're nourishing ourselves in terms of rest time, food, exercise, general self-care. It's an effortless process, and we are supercharging our energy levels then. So in a way, there's nothing taken away from the time or the energy or the attention that we have to then give to other people, because through looking after ourselves, we are topping up and we're making ourselves more vital, more revitalized.
Absolutely. It's like a battery on a car. And you use the battery of the car to run your lights, to start the engine, to run all the things you need on the dashboard. But you have to replenish the battery through the alternator. And this is the same idea. You connect to the source, to the universe, to your innate worth and value. You allow it to flow through that bridge, come through you first, and then from your bridge out. And so it's a constant flow. And this is your strength. This is your resilience. You have an abundance of it. Don't deny yourself by building that wall. Be the flow. Be part of the flow. And this is the teaching of the Tao, the way, the flow, being in the flow. This is who you are. And your life changes immediately because you get that different sense of joy, of love, of worthiness flowing through every cell in your body. And it has to flow out. You can't hold on to it. You don't need it because there's more coming in. You have to create space to receive more. And so you actually give out more. You have more energy, more love, more care, more time. And this is why this teaching is vital, Alex.
And David, the reality of this, though, is that when we're giving out, when we're in this better place, this more authentic place, and we're giving out in a more careful way, in a more considered way, in a more managed way. And there will be boundaries that we are putting in place that we may not have put in place before. Now, the consequence of that is we will have internally kind of reformed ourselves to a better place. But those around us who are used to us, frankly, maybe being a doormat of previously sacrificing ourselves too much for them, and they've basically taken, they might not like it. But I guess when we truly love ourselves and value ourselves, we are more at peace with the idea that they may be unhappy with us changing how we relate to them.
Well, that's a very interesting concept, because you can see how when the inner child sees it from their point of view, they're looking for other people to give them that reassurance and that validation. I would say those people who you say in your family who love you and care for you, they should be really happy to see you thriving. They should be really happy to see you in good health and well-being. They should be really happy to see you on top of your game. And they will receive your attention more in abundance, without you being drained, without you running your batteries down. You'll have more energy, more love, more attention to give to them, because it's never ending and it's flowing through you. And so you see, the question that Alex asked, how the inner child can hang on to the dregs of the old way of thinking. And that's why you have to do steady, consistent steps every day to help re-educate the inner child to this new way of thinking, this new way of life, where you're a spiritual being thriving to your highest potential and reaching your potential and bringing everyone along in your wake.
Thank you, David. Well, I've really enjoyed this teaching. And like I say, I will put a link in the show notes to our Inner Child playlist, but also a link to our Love and Relationships teaching playlist, which has plenty of teachings on there on the sort of dynamics we've talked about of putting in place boundaries and of self-love and self-care. So I'm sure that will be hugely beneficial as part of your work in this subject. I really hope you have enjoyed this teaching. Please do let us know, and perhaps share it with someone else who you think it may also help. David works every week with clients all over the world via Zoom video call on exactly these sort of topics. If you're interested in learning more about David's one-to-one consultations, do check out the show notes, because I'll put a link there for those. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 short-form midweek snippets of wisdom. So don't forget to subscribe. We look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Bye-bye.